What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Black and Gold. This is HiBruiNation with Goosey and one of my new co-hosts in Whitey. And helping us out from Hab Normals, we have the Nordimer, Mr. Nordy. We're the unofficial, we're the unofficial home of your Boston Bruins. And tonight we are joined by a very special, awesome guest. He is a former 15-year veteran in the NHL, 2010 silver medalist, 2011 All-Star, former captain of the St. Louis Blues, member of the Boston Bruins and Anaheim Ducks. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to introduce Mr. David Backus.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks for joining, man. Yeah,
David.
Awesome.
Really appreciate you coming on.
How's retirement?
Kind of here, there, and everywhere. Jumped into a couple of restaurants in Minnesota right when I retired, and then sold them after the first year, and now chasing kids and trying to be super dad whenever I can.
Oh, nice, dude. That's awesome. And you said, like, so are you guys like in Wisconsin like permanently, or is it kind of like do you guys kind of just hop around a little bit?
It used to be in season, out of season, but with little kids now it's when school's in session, when school's not in session. So when school's in session, we currently live in Nashville area, and then when school's not in session, we escape north to Wisconsin, where we've got some land, and just finished up actually with the family. The in-laws are across the street and had a tree go down in a storm tonight, so I got to run the chainsaw, and the kids were filling up the trailer with a bunch of sticks, and yeah, it was a little family bonding and just out in nature, no screens involved, and trying to, formulate and cultivate some of those things with our kids too.
Cool, man. Hey, that sounds like fun. I mean, I don't have any kids yet. I do plan to have them, but that's like some of the stuff. I have a 9-year-old sister, but she's kind of like an in-home body. She likes to play video games, but she also likes to just go outside for to play on the playground. She doesn't like all that other stuff that I tried to take her fishing, I think once, and she was like, let's go home.
Yeah.
So
I understand. You got to foster the kids, and yeah, there's plenty of screens around, which certainly is the new age way of doing things, but I think there's also a down and dark side of that as well. So trying to foster those things in our kids, some work ethic and their hands dirty and willing to do some of the things they don't want to do in life, which makes you a more well-rounded human. So that was today's activity.
Cool, man. Awesome. Glad to hear it. And we're very happy to have you on. I mean, you had quite an extensive career in the NHL, a captain of the Blues, an awesome franchise. And then you came over to Boston, and then I have to tell you, when you came in here in free agency in 2016, when I saw that we picked you up, I was ecstatic. I play video games, so like on NHL, I would always actually tend to trade for you. You were like one of the big heavy hitting power forwards. Like you always just screamed Bruin to me, right? And so when we got you, I was like beyond elated. I was like, yes, great deal, 5 years, let's go, David Backus. U.S. native, U.S. native, from Minnesota, Minneapolis. I'm like, yeah, see, it's still the jitters, right? I still can't get out of it. And I'm sure, Whitey and Matt feel the same. So we're actually from Boston, ourselves. So it's just genuinely a pleasure. A lot of the fans know you for your hockey career. But we're probably curious, what drove you into hockey? Like what inspired you, and what was your path like to the NHL?
Well, my initiation into hockey, I come from a small town in Minnesota, and my dad played just a small amount of junior college baseball. And so when I was 5, I went to play T-ball with my buddy, or signed up for T-ball, and like the guys I was playing, parents got along, and then baseball season was over, and everyone else was going to play hockey, which was not in my family at all. So I followed my friends to the hockey rink to play hockey, and didn't have the most glamorous of starts. My mom just put me there on the ice with skates on and no helmet, and I smacked my head on the ice first time out there. But then I got all the gear and felt like I was invincible, and upward trajectory from then. Played at that small hometown my whole youth hockey, some AAA stuff in the summer, not quite as crazy as it was or it is now, and was really, I mean, I was a better player on the team, but we were a small city and we weren't beating any of the big cities, and there was certainly a couple players that were better than me skill wise up until probably high school, when I was 6'3", 175, 180 pounds. Started to grow into my body a little bit, get a little more comfortable, and started to develop the mentality of just whatever it took to beat my opponent that night, I was going to do. And I think that's I can't put a peg on exactly when that happened, but I feel like that is what made my NHL career. My skill level was decent, across the board, but I think that mentality and that initiative, that whatever it took, I was going to get the better of my opponent that night. That's what made me an NHLer. And I think it was somewhere in high school where, along the way, when you're one of the better players, probably my junior and senior years, they start to, mark you as if you don't have enough good players, and they can mark the better players in the other team, have a shadow on you or whatever. And that started to be me, and brought out that competitiveness in me of like, that guy's not shutting me down. I don't care who they play against me. And then was drafted into junior in the USHL with the Lincoln Stars. And the story comes out that my high school hockey coach actually played college with the coach in Lincoln. They both played at University of North Dakota. And my high school coach said, just after this, you won't regret it. And Steve Johnson was the coach of Lincoln. They had a proper conversation after, I think it was a development camp or something for the USHL. And he said, I don't know if this kid's going to make it here. And my high school coach said, just give him a shot. And so my senior year of high school, I started here in Nebraska, and with the Billet family in high school for the first time. And the rule back then was you had to play 10 games before you left if you wanted to come back after your high school season. And so he didn't think I was going to get 10 games in after the preseason. And then I played, I think, 11 games. He was begging me not to go back to high school, which played with a group of guys for my whole youth hockey. I wanted to go have my senior year with them. So I did that. Came back to Lincoln. We made a little bit. We made it into playoffs, made a one round of playoffs. And then the whole next year was in Lincoln, and we won the regular season. The postseason, had just a blast, and then was drafted that year to the St. Louis Blues in the second round. I went to Minnesota State University for 3 years, which I committed to them after my junior year in high school. And it wasn't quite the landscape of college hockey the way it is now, that, guys have a portal and they can switch. You see switching schools all the time. That was my goal with my hockey career, was to play Division I hockey and get a scholarship. And if I did that, I would say all of the early mornings and the off-ice training and all the time I spent on the ice was worth it, justified its existence. So as a junior, I had a couple schools that were after me, RPI, Yale, and then Minnesota State, Mankato. And I didn't know much about college hockey outside of the WCHA in the Midwest. So I committed to Minnesota State, and then, those are 1 year letter of intent. So after my senior year, I was a little more scouted. And then after another year in Lincoln, when we won everything, I probably could have picked any school I wanted to at that point with the success we had and the success I had in the USHL. But story behind that is, before I signed that letter of intent, I went to the Gophers and I said, listen, I grew up watching the Gophers. The North Stars left when I was like 7 years old, and all I'd watched is college hockey, and the Gophers were the only thing on TV. So I said, hey, just offer me a 10% scholarship. And I won't take the scholarship, but just they know you're interested, and there's a chance that we make this, dream come true, play with the Gophers. And they said, well, we want to see you develop more. We're not ready to do that. So Mankato was offering me, I think it was a 90% scholarship at the time. So I took that. And then I wasn't going to jump ship, but just to make sure I didn't, they upped it to 100%, which then I went there for 3 years after being drafted, and there was a NHL lockout in there, but 3 full years later, some success, and ended up signing with St. Louis, which was a dream come true. I remember I was in my uncle's basement playing darts with my dad and my uncle, and it was contract negotiation after my third year, and they were offering me, I think it was like $300,000 signing bonus back in the day. And
That's pretty good
my
back
agent's
then, right?
my agent's like, there's no way we can take this. We're turning this down. You should have, 400,000, 500,000 in signing bonus. And I came from a middle-class family, and my dad was almost slapping me. He's like, you mean you're turning down, $300,000 guaranteed because you're going to get more? And I'm like, just let the agent do what he's supposed to do and we'll be fine. So then it was 455, I think, that I ended up getting and signed, and went to Peoria for a little bit to play some HL hockey. So that was the start of the NHL world, and a little more well-known, I guess, from then on. And I won't take this to be a complete monologue of my
I have to chip in here. I've got a question, because Cam and I were talking about this before you came in. It says that you're drafted in the second round. Now you say that 62nd overall, but there were only 30 teams back then. So how is it not the third round?
Because they don't want to hurt my ego and make it in the third round.
We're trying to figure this out.
Now, you guys are all younger than I am, but back in the day, okay, back in the day, they used to have draft picks. If you lost free agents, they used to supplement you with, I don't know how the whole system. It wasn't a thing when I was a pro. So there was 64 picks, maybe.
They have the NFL team now too. If you lose a free agent or something, you get the.
Yeah, now I get it. I remember.
Oh, that's
type
interesting.
of draft pick. Yeah,
I actually remember that. Okay.
Right. So it was actually Carolina's pick. I don't know who they lost to get the pick, but St. Louis traded the rights to Corey Stillman to Carolina to grab that pick or move up to get that pick in the picking. So, yeah, that's a little confounding.
I remember that. I actually remember that deal. I remember that.
Yeah.
Reading about that. So that's crazy. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, because there's like so many teams in the NHL now. Like there's 32 teams. So like that, it's growing. It's growing and it's great. I think it's a perfect number. What was that? Sorry, David.
34 in a year or two.
Yeah. Well, I think they're looking to bring. I think Atlanta's bidding to come back.
Yeah, we talked about it in our pod the other day.
Yeah, but
so David, you just mentioned your contract negotiations and stuff like that. Obviously, we're a Boston Bruins podcast. I'm curious if there was anything particular that brought you to Boston, or just what went through those negotiations to get you here at the time you did after 10 years in St. Louis.
Well, in the intro, you guys mentioned the idea of me fitting in with the Bruins and the Bruins culture and what it means to be a Bruin. And I think that was super attractive. Original Six franchise was super attractive. But I remember having talks with Claude Julien when it was that free agent window back in the day when that was a thing. I'm like, why do you want me to be your third line center? Like, you've got two right-handed centermen, first, like Bergeron and Krejci. Why would you bring me in to be another right-handed center? He's like, don't worry about that. You just win the draw. I don't care. Like, okay, well, you asked for it.
It sounds like Claude.
Sounds like it, yeah.
But there's so many things that go into a negotiation, and down to the brass tacks of it is that St. Louis, which I wanted to be a Blue for life, you're there for 10 years, you're the captain. It's like, why wouldn't you re-sign me? I'm 32 and I'm still very useful. Whether or not I'm going to justify, $5.5, $6 million. I want to play 1,000 games and I want to be a Blue for life. And they would not even discuss a fifth year. It didn't matter if it was for $1. They wouldn't discuss a fifth year. And it felt like our window was still open. It just made it to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in my career. Every year we were getting better. And the years we didn't make it far in the playoffs because we were playing Chicago or LA in the first round. Yeah. And we're taking them to 7 games. And then you debrief with those guys after the season and they're like, that was the hardest series we played the whole playoffs. And you're like, well, we're getting no credit because it's like, to make excuses for them, but it's kind of like the Maple Leafs. Like they got a great team, but they're trying to get through a bit of a gauntlet, whether it's Boston or whether it's Florida and, inside their division. And certainly there's a wall you got to eventually push through no matter who you're playing. But you learn those lessons and eventually you say, No, we beat Chicago in 7 games my final year there. And then we beat Dallas in 7 games my final year there. We played San Jose, and you know what? They were a good team, and we just kind of ran out of gas after playing the first 2 rounds, 7 games. And that's just the way it goes sometimes. So, yeah, I was, I'm a little miffed and like loyalty. Well, eventually you see
Right.
instances with like, I look at Marc-Edouard Vlasic in San Jose, like a guy that's drafted there, played 19 years there. He's got 1 year left on his deal, and they're going to buy him. And unless he went to the office and was like, I've got no gas left, I'm done playing,
Right.
But I'm gonna retire. Let's make buy me out, okay? Or if his body's broken and he just can't do it anymore, then he should be on the long-term IR probably. But to me, it's a situation, and right before I went to free agency, Barrett Jackson, who was a lifelong Blue, they wouldn't give him any sort of deal, even a 1-year deal at league minimum to come back. And he would have come back, but he had to go sign and move his family to Nashville for a year. That wasn't a great scenario. To me, all those things are like player loyalty to the team, blah, 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 blah. But then when the shoe's on the other foot, it's certainly not complicated. So I had to make a decision for me and my family, and you know what? To Boston we went.
Cool. Yeah,
That's awesome.
I mean, and like I said, I was glad to have you. I mean, whenever we played against you, like I'm not a scout by any means. I'm 30 years old, but like I maybe I could have pretended to be in 2016. 2016, because you guys beat. You're right, in the playoffs. You guys got to the Western Final, right? Was that year?
We lost in 6.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can say this: you made me mad many a time against the Habs. Many a time.
Well, I can't apologize for that, but
I don't expect you to. I wouldn't, but you made me mad many a time. But I'm really happy to meet you, though.
There you go, Rick. Thanks for the chime in.
Yeah, that's a compliment to me.
Well, yeah. Well, you said that was your goal, right? You like to outperform the guy that's next to you, right? So they like that motivational piece, that competitive level. And you sound like you're still very well versed in the league, and you're very still familiar with what's going on in the ins and outs of it. In terms of like drafting too, sometimes you wonder, like, do you want to take the guy that has the talent or the guy that has that competitive edge that's going to get him to that level? So for you, when you were drafted, I mean, now that it's decentralized, right? That takes some fun out of it, right? For some of the players, what was it like for you? Were you in that arena? Were you in that area? What was that experience like?
Well, the draft was 2003 in Nashville, and again, I feel like an old man. I'm referencing back in the day, but back in the day, the first 3 rounds were on Friday night, and then rounds 4 through 7 or 9 or whatever there were on the next day. So I had 2 buddies from Lincoln that we all went to the draft together and said, whatever happens, happens. But kind of the goal was first day would be amazing. And then asking my agent, like, what are expectations here? And he said late first round and then the second round. So my whole family went there, and my buddies were there, and we're sitting up in the stands, and you don't know. And the whole, first round's going on, and I think it was Florida was picking, and I look at the draft table, and they're pointing up at me in the stands, and I'm like, yes, like first round. And they go up to the stage and they pick, and they're like, with this pick, we pick Nathan Horton, and he was represented by the same agent. All the agents guys sit together. So I think he was right behind me, and they were pointing at him, and I was like, oh, dang.
Oh my God.
It's like when a girl waves to you at a bar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the guy behind you.
I couldn't buy them a drink and smooth it over and wear it back over. It was already done. So that happened, and you get past the first round, you're like, fine, whatever. And they're telling you a way of like, this doesn't really define you as a player. This is just a stepping stone and a marker where you're at right now. Motivation maybe to prove some of these people wrong. And 2003 was a wildly deep draft. Like if you look at the names in that draft, especially the first rounders, if you could steal a guy in the second or third, like those are all franchise players that franchises set themselves up for a decade of success based on how they drafted or didn't draft in that 2003 draft. So yeah, that was my draft story. And then in Nashville, obviously it's Nashville, and it was not Nashville now. Nashville back then was a little bit more rednecky honky tonk bar. Now it's really commercialized. You go to South Broadway, but so we somehow got a couple cases of beer up to the room. We had quite a few, and we're like, let's go walk down Broadway. So we're walking down, and then the beer hits, and we all got to pee, and we're like, okay, let's slide into Hard Rock Cafe. So we went into the Hard Rock Cafe and don't buy anything, just go right to the bathroom. And we're 3 in a row, about to pee. Draft night, just got drafted. And we literally about to start peeing, and our security guard guy says, go, and I'm calling the cops on you. And we're like, what? And he goes, you didn't buy anything, you can't pee here. He followed us into the bathroom. So we zip our pants up, get out of the bathroom, and we end up peeing in an alley instead of peeing at the Hard Rock Cafe. Probably should have been arrested more for peeing in the Hard Rock Cafe. But and then I look back and I'm like, what a story that would have been to get drafted and then get arrested for indecent exposure, peeing in the alley. Well, honky tonk, because we can contain ourselves with having a couple pops after celebrating. So.
That's crazy. Like, a guy follows you into the bathroom and just says, you can't pee here. Like, what if you are what if you were in a stall or something? Is he just gonna like kick it down and be like, I hate to interrupt your business, but like you're gonna need to like fix that and go. Yeah, like what are you gonna do?
That was my story. That was like, and then St. Louis had a development camp shortly thereafter. Got to introduce myself to the city, and I remember those development camps. I always thought it was the worst. It was like mid-August in St. Louis. It's 150 degrees there, and then you're there. You're not really in shape, but you're trying to act like you're in shape because you're trying to impress this pro team. And my first year, Al McInnes was running the development camp, and there was 9 forwards and 9 defensemen. And it was like one-on-one drills, left, right, and center. And shocker to everyone, but I'm not really like a beat a guy one-on-one type of player. And I was getting so frustrated with it. We had like 5 days scheduled. After the 7th day, huge storm rolls through St. Louis. Power goes out at the rink, the ice melts, and development camp gets canceled. So that was someone looking down on me in that instance.
It sounds like you've had like quite the experience in that draft era. That's kind of wild to me. That's like my old high school, like not high school, sorry, college, like frat party that I was at.
Yeah, you'd know more, but social media wasn't a thing back then. You got to just live life and display.
Kind of a good thing. Social media really wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah, it's true. Right.
So just going back to that 2003 draft, you had on your Olympic team in was 2014 against Sochi, you had Dustin Brown, Parise, Ryan Suter. How electric was that to be on the bench watching TJ Oshie go at it in the shootout? Like, that's one of my core memories. I was, I think, 21 at the time, just turning 21, and I was up at 5 in the morning watching that. How electric was that for you?
Yeah, 2014 was awesome. I would say 2010 was the most fun I've ever had playing hockey.
You got silver in that, right?
Overtime, anything could happen. Ryan Miller, who was absolutely a stud for us, got us to that game. A little shot off the half wall. Who thinks to even shoot that puck and happens to go in? But yeah, 2014, I was roommates with Osh. We were both in St. Louis, so we were at the Olympics together, and he does his shootout thing against Russia in the building, and 4 times in a row or 5 times, whatever it is, just he's unbelievable. And so after the game, we're all celebrating, shower. Where's Osh? We go have a meal, and I'm in the room like, where did this guy go? He peels in like an hour and a half after I'm in there, and he's like, hey, don't you think they're making kind of a big deal? Like, they're making too big of a deal out of this. I'm like, Osh, you have no idea what you just did. Like, he got whisked away to do NBC and all these interviews, and then afterwards he's like, I don't see what the big deal is. And that's
That's
just,
like top 2 moments in United States hockey history besides 1980.
sure, for sure. And I had no idea what he'd even done. So that's the kind of guy he is. He's humble. He does his business, and just an awesome guy. But that team was awesome. Then the next game, I think we played Canada in the semifinal, 1-0 game. Jamey then scored the goal. Remember, because I was on the ice, it was a face-off. He won it back, and he got a tip on the puck going back to the net. But and then we played Finland in the bronze medal game, and for whatever reason, Finland always wins the bronze medal game. And I think whatever. I think everyone else is so let down by the semifinal game, and just are stoic and they don't show emotion, or maybe they don't have emotion. They just continue on and go to win the next one. So
just going back to the shootout real quick. I know I wasn't really privy to it at the time, just the Olympic shootout rules. Did you guys know that Oshie and Datsuk could just keep going and going and going, or was that kind of was that understood by you guys before?
Yeah, I think was it like a World Junior before that where somebody kept going time again? Maybe Troy Terry or something like that was going time and time again, or Taves. I don't remember. I think I'd seen it in a World Junior where somebody just kept going for US or Canada, and I was like, this is a weird rule, but apparently international rules, they can do that.
Shots, if I'm not mistaken, in international play. I think after the first 3 shooters, you can just keep sending.
I think so. I think that might be it.
Right. So it was pretty cool. All I know is my skates were untied. I was not going to be going in that shootout.
Just know that me and my buddy were up watching the game at 5 a.m. We had a few beers going, so that's all I was happy about. And then when he scored that game winner, it was just absolutely electric. So it was just absolutely amazing watching you guys that year.
Yeah, cool.
David, you mentioned that you were part of the St. Louis Blues for 10 years. That's a long time, and you were the captain for, I think it was 5 years. I think half that tenure. Yeah, you were there, and so you got to witness the play from just being a player on the team perspective and then being a captain. Do you feel like there's like a different approach to that? Like what's it like being a captain and also just being a player on the team?
I absolutely think it gave me a bit different perspective, and it's different. When you don't have a letter on your chest, you're not part of a leadership group, you're really mono focused on what your task is and what you need to do, where you get into leadership group, you've got a letter on your chest. Now it's holistic of, you're thinking about as a team, what do we need? As, how are my teammates doing? How can I help them out? Who's struggling? How can I lend them some knowledge or take some pressure off them? Meetings with the coach, and the coach saying, what do we need today? And sometimes it's, we need an ass whooping. Sometimes it's, we're gassed. We gotta a day off, just bring the guys in and maybe watch video and send them home again. We don't need to go on the ice. All those things, a little more media availability, some community stuff, and roll all that in. And it's certainly a great privilege, but there's responsibility that comes with it. And I would say being the captain in St. Louis helped me become a better person, a better teammate, probably a better husband and family member, to be fully encompassed and aware of things around me. And then when I got to Boston, obviously with the Z and Bergie and Kretsch, I didn't need a letter on my jersey every night to, still have some of those tendencies of, yes, those guys are the captains, but I can help out by being the first guy in line and showing everyone else this isn't just them doing it. This is right. Anyone can grab the reins at night. Anyone can, be the guy a teammate can lean on. Anyone can connect with each other and create a deeper bond, so that when things get hot and heavy and you either need a little slap across the face, or you need, a pick me up, there's a relationship built there and some common experiences where you're not taking it personally, and you know that I have your best interest in mind, and that we're doing this all together, and I'm just here to help you. And that I think really helped that team. Again, there's a progression. We got to the playoffs after the coaching change with Bruce Cassidy, and then made, another step to another round, and then 2019 finally started putting it together, and we were a force to be reckoned with. And unfortunately, my ring finger's still bare, but I feel like that team should have won a Stanley Cup that year.
Yeah. I was definitely rooting, obviously, for the Bruins that year. I was actually a tad miffed when I saw that they didn't dress you for that game. There was something like deep inside of me that felt like I feel like that would have gone differently. Especially because to me that goes back to it goes back to a respect thing for me. It's like, that's your former team. I feel like you have the opportunity that you should leave it out on the ice. That's me being on your side. So if you ever need a lawyer, I could try my best.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Unbiased.
I was just going to mention that.
I'm unbiased, of course.
Motivation did you have for that whole series? Like, did you feel slighted by the Blue? I mean, you mentioned earlier that you were a little TO that they didn't give you the 5th year, but how much motivation went into that series against the Blues?
Well, I wanted the Blues to win a cup someday, but not at my expense.
Yeah, it's very fair.
In that series, hell yeah, I wanted it to be me, and they can let their Stanley Cup drought, continue for another decade and then win one later after I'm retired. But yeah, certainly. I actually didn't play in games 5, 6, or 7 of that series. So when I left the series, it was a 2-2 series, and that's still where my mind feels like it is, because that's when any impact I could have was taken away,
right?
Because I didn't play those last 3 games. And so there was certainly a little microcosm for life, things not being in your control that affect you dramatically. And I'll never forget Game 7 at the Garden, and it's 1-0. Not a terrible deal. Like we're still in it. Tuukka's going to shut them down, and then they scored with a couple seconds left in the first period. And that's when I stopped watching. I went in the elevator, went down under the building, and I paced in the locker room for the second and third period, wore out the carpet, and never watched another second of that series. And that, anxiety and that sort of just helplessness feeling, would have turned around, but never really got that counterpunch in that game. And something about me says that I would have tried to provide that, whether it was try to take someone's head off or, Jordan Binnington made, what do you make? Like 7, grade A chance saves in the first.
Unreal.
Maybe run him over. I don't know what I would have done, or just jabbed with him, or speared him in the face, or just punched. I don't know, but I feel like a little bit of a spark, because we never got off the mat again after we made that push, a bunch of chances, they score, and then it was kind of like that. There wasn't effort. There was certainly effort, and I don't think anybody quit, but there wasn't that spark of let's build off of that and let's go, whether it's scream at your teammates or whatever. So that's what it looks like in my head. And wish I could have the chance, 15 years of the only time I made it to a final, and then to sit out the final 3 games kind of sits in my gull a little bit, that didn't get an at bat to try to make a difference.
I will say this, I absolutely love the blatant honesty about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, especially with that experience, right? Like, yeah, it's great to hear too. I'm sure do you still watch the games, or you regularly involved, still following the NHL and those kind of elements?
I follow up on games more so teammates and guys that I played with, that I really enjoy their company and think they're just outstanding humans, that hopefully they're having success, and trends of the league and things like that. I don't want to get too far out from it. I do enjoy being with my kids a lot, and that's probably what's kept me from diving back into the game full time, just to spend more time with them. But I still love the game. I would say there's a year where I didn't see a hockey bag or a game at all, and then a year where I thought about it. And then the last 2 years, I've fallen back in love with it. I skate weekly with a group of guys in Nashville, a couple retired guys and country music artists, and go out there and just have a great time. So I've fallen back in love with the game, and we'll see what the future holds for me.
Awesome. I mean, I asked too because as you've probably seen, like Amazon Prime put out this video of it's been seen of Connor McDavid absolutely losing it, on his team, in order to to spark them, right? To kind of get them going, get them riled, get the adrenaline pumping, right? You mentioned that's big. Teams need that because sometimes you can't take a night off, right? But sometimes you do, whether it's unintentional, intentional, what have you. So, I mean, in dealing in all of the, the 3 locker rooms that you've been into, especially, being in the playoffs for as many times as you have been, have you ever seen captains or certain players react that way to kind of get everyone angry, to get everyone in that state of mind that wake up, look what we're fighting for?
Yeah, I think you see that all the time, especially when you feel like you're leaving something out there. That sort of competitiveness and fire comes out. I would say I can't really speak. The Anaheim experience was kind of to me a little bonus. I was probably going to be bought out by the Bruins that summer, and Anaheim wanted to trade for me. So I got a little bonus hockey where I had almost put my career to bed and was able to do a lot of things, especially with COVID and spending a lot of time with younger guys, to do some mentoring with them that maybe I didn't have as much time for in other aspects or situations of my career. In St. Louis, being a guy that played almost 20 minutes a night as a your body, I tried to lead by example a lot more, and I was on the ice. I could steer the game a lot. I would say when I got to Boston, you had guys that were doing that with Bergie and Marsh and Kretsch and Z and Tuca. But I also remembered that I didn't have kind of energy to do that when I was in St. Louis because I was so exhausted from playing into the game and being on the ice all the time. So, being third, fourth line kind of guy in Boston, I felt, I could contribute to the team by being more vocal and being kind of a rah-rah guy. And while I wasn't able to steer the game with my play as much on the ice, I felt like there was a great opportunity for me to take some of that burden off of those guys that allow them to maybe pour more into the game because they knew I could steer the bench and it would come from a guy that was in the fight more than, a guy that was just standing behind the bench and didn't have any blood, sweat, and tears in the game. So that's how I see it differently in Boston. I think it was, a pretty good formula we had, and it was probably the best group of guys that I've been able to play with as far as caring for each other and being on each other and loving on each other on and off the ice. So yeah, that's kind of how I see that. As far as giving it to anyone, it's more of just there's an emotional control there too of demanding, but not little, like for me, Connor McDavid, he's all world, maybe one of the most skilled guy to ever play the game. And he might be able to do that. But I think there's also a time when it almost looks, and from anybody, that I'm doing it and you're not, and you guys need to help me. There's a balance there, and he might need somebody that can come, and maybe it's Corey Perry. It sounds like Corey Perry for Game 5 kind of did that, where he let loose and the guys all listened. Problem is that also gets tiring, like 6,
right.
If it's coming from that voice again, it's like, oh, here goes again, where maybe it needs to be another guy. And to me, the difference I think the series might look different if Zach Hyman's still healthy in that series, because he was a anecdote. Anecdote to kind of what Florida was doing, and another veteran guy that would speak up and be that voice in the lineup as well. So I don't know where I spun myself into, but that's.
I thought it was a great response. Like, it's.
Yeah, absolutely.
I stopped playing hockey when I was about maybe 7 or 8 years old. I was just expensive, and to be honest with you, I was a lazy kid. If I'm going to be honest with you, but I've since picked it back up and refound my love of the game, and I met these awesome guys to do this, and kind of like going full circle. Playing in the league is a great pleasure. You hear from every single player. It's a dream for so many people, and especially for being U.S. born. I mean, you were the second U.S. born captain of the St. Louis behind Brett Hull, and you're basically an embodiment of hope for a lot of kids that have those dreams, right? And so joining the league is hard. So I imagine retiring from the league is equally as hard. So what ultimately led you to that decision to kind of hang them up?
Well, if you recall too, when I was playing, I had 10 documented concussions in the league.
Mm-hmm.
As my time was dwindling down in Anaheim, I played 165 regular season games. That COVID year, I needed to play like 50 games out of the 56 to get to 1,000, and I was scratched like 8 of the first 10, and that was out the door. And you start to do some reflection of, I played 15 years in this league. I played physically. I've made a good living for myself. Am I going to chase it and uproot my family to go here, there, and everywhere on a league minimum deal to try to accomplish something that I've just? Am I going to feel complete after 1,000 games? Is then going to be like, okay, I'm done. I can hang my skates up. Is that going to feel different than 965? Maybe, but at what cost? And after 10 concussions, this story is less told of, you meet after a concussion, you meet with the team docs and they do this impact test and you get back to the baseline and you do all these other crazy pencil tests to see if the brain's wired correctly. And I mean, the team doc is a little biased. They work for the team. If you can meet the baseline, they've got their standard met, go play hockey. And I asked the Bruins for a second opinion because I didn't know after 10 concussions if I was still be able to play catch with my kid in the backyard in 10 years. So I flew to Ann Arbor, Michigan to meet with Dr. Kutcher. And I thought to myself, I just effectively ended my career because what neurologist in their right mind is going to say, hey, 10 concussions? Yeah, go ahead. You're good. Go have another. And I didn't know what this was like, this consult with this guy. I figured, look at my history, say 10 concussions, no good. You should never play hockey again. Collect your check, but never lace your skates up again. And I got there 2 full days of testing of HD MRIs brain at the University of Michigan. It was neural mapping. He put me on a bike and got my heart rate to certain levels, saw if that induced different symptoms. I was in a turf field and he was throwing me tennis balls while I was spinning all around. He put me on the ice and did all these things. And when I would get overwhelmed, ping pong balls, music playing. Behind the ping pong balls was different stimulus of, different things going by with music playing. Did that overwhelm you? And turns out my neck muscles from so many hits were freaking out. And so I lidocaine injected into my neck muscles and it just relaxed. And immediately my headaches went away. And he's like, here's what's going on is that your body, when you get it, you get hit hard, it does what it's supposed to do. It, tenses everything up and freaks out, but protects your brain. Your brain looks great. I've got no issues with how your brain looks. But you need to strengthen your neck muscles and also stretch your neck muscles so that when the next hit happens, they tighten, but then you're able to release them and loosen up again. And I have no issues with you returning to play hockey. Just do these strengthening, stretching exercises. And I left there going, well, I buried my career. I thought I had ended it myself, but turns out my brain's totally fine, which was first and foremost what I was concerned about. But second of all, that I can play hockey and I don't have to worry about, is my next one going to be the one that puts me out for good or has me dinner through a straw for the rest of my life. So all those things turned into me like having some freedom to go out and play again and do my thing. And so that concussion concern that I overcome. I mean, the next one can still be one detrimental to your quality of life for the rest of your life. Realizing I had 2 young kids at home that I wanted to be, around for their life. And then, I mean, my teeth are still like, not all my teeth. I don't have like gap in my jaw where.
Right. You're not Drew Doughty or Brent Burns because, we don't think they have teeth anymore, right? Like
eating pasta.
It's all porcelain.
Even through the straw, I don't limp. I'm able to work out. I'm able to be active with my kids and my family. And at some point, I just say this is for the best for everything. And I've had a great run, and I'm extremely grateful for it.
David, that story is very empowering too, because you never hear about that kind of stuff too from many players. Like, of course, when the injury reports come out, we're like, Bergie had a punctured lung, Chara had a broken jaw, David Backes was suffering from a concussion, but we never know the full process of how a player returns to game time action. Because sure, I can go play, a pickup game across the street at the rink that's near my house, but at the same time, that's nowhere near to the competitive level of what you guys play at, right? Like, I actually played with Bob Sweeney out in Peabody, Massachusetts, and he's been an older gentleman, but my God, he's still solid on skates. I went down, and he's just like, "You good?" I'm like, "Depends. Are you?" I'm joking with him. But we never hear from your guys' perspective, how it really does impact your body. Because, as fans, we want team success and we want you guys to succeed alongside that. But tangential in the back of our minds, we're not thinking what it's actually doing to your bodies. And Matt's actually a big injury guy. Although if you were to slip and land on your hand, he'd think you probably broke every bone in your body and you'd be dead. Because if he was a doctor, he's the equivalent to WebMD.
Yeah.
But he talks about it. It's awesome to hear that from your perspective and how difficult it is to make that decision, but it being the right decision on top of it. Oh, that's awesome. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm my brain's rattling with. I mean, I guess I could have.
It's really, really good insight. I can't thank you enough really for sharing this with us, David. This is really, really. Again, my brain's spinning right now, just kind of trying to process.
Again, I think we should find better choice of words for that.
I want to get back to this for a second. So there were 68 picks in the first 2 rounds the year that David was in the draft, but Montreal picked Maxime Lapierre over you. That was a mistake.
Look,
Would you how would you have thought of coming to Montreal if they'd have picked you?
I'm not a huge fan of playing in Canada, to tell you the truth.
Yes.
Okay,
Montreal,
I get it.
Probably the worst cities. If I had to rank them, Montreal would have been the worst city. Edmonton would have been the second worst city. Then Toronto. I signed actually a offer sheet with Vancouver. I would have been fine with Vancouver probably, and then Calgary would have been fine as well. But Winnipeg, that's probably right there before Edmonton. So no to all of them. And Max and I played together in St. Louis.
True.
So did BJ Crombie, and I would never instigate it, but other guys would be like, "I can't believe they picked BJ Crombie before you." And
that's true. I saw that. No, even Max Lapierre. Sorry, he didn't have the career you had. I mean, it was a mistake. Whether you wanted to come play here or not, they should have picked you over Max Lapierre.
Hindsight being 2020, easy to say that, but it's a good way to rate those guys and give them a hard time because you got to keep it light too.
David, I actually have a question on that. So, because I bet you these organizations make picks for a reason. Do they ever interview you guys, or do they ever gauge kind of where you have a preference of playing? Because if you remember, when Eric Lindros was picked by Winnipeg, he never wanted to play there.
No, it was Quebec that he was drafted by.
Oh, I'm sorry, Quebec. Yeah, Quebec. And then it was kind of like a big stink. Do they always try to keep that in mind?
I don't know that they'd ever ask that question, but when I was at the NFL Combine, I think I interviewed with 28 teams when I was there. So there's different questions about your family and trying to get to know you. And then some of them were a little more intense, asking you if you were tough or what player you're going to play like when you get older. But never have been asked, like, would you come play here? Again, no offense to Eric Lindros or anybody, but as much as I wouldn't have picked to play in Canada, if a Canadian team would have picked me, I would not have put up a stink or asked my agent to get me traded. I would have gone and had a ton of pride and privilege, and it would have been an honor to put in that NHL hockey jersey, and I would have given anything, to put it on and do the best I could. I'm a lot miffed at, like, you want to pick what team you're going to play on, get to 27 years old and become a restricted free agent. You pick what team you play on. When you're a little turd rookie and you played no games in the NHL and you're going to ask for a trade before you've put on an NHL jersey, who do you think you are? Like, this is a privilege to play in the league. So that's my stance on that, and I'm sticking to it.
That's why Lindros.
I gotta have him meet Alex. And so we actually have a resident Flyers fan, and Eric Lindros is one of his favorite players. And so I had this argument with him several times over. I'm like, dude, but you can't just bitch your way out of a place. Like, you have a dream that like so many people want, and that's how you're gonna behave. And he just goes, whatever.
And I know Big E. I saw him at a charity thing in Toronto, and a great guy. But I wonder if you asked him if he would have handled that situation different now that he's
probably.
He would have. 40s. I heard it was his parents that really didn't want him to play there, and his parents controlled his career for most of it anyway. And
But cool. No, I wanted your perspective on that too, because we as fans also never really see what goes on in the draft. Like, we get to see the combine, we get to see you guys get drafted, and so like for us, this is like phenomenal insight to actually be able to understand. And listening to you and your experience has been an absolute pleasure. I think Whitey has if you have time for one more question, Whitey has one more for you.
Yeah, I just got one more quick one, and very lighthearted, kind of to ease the deeper hockey discussion, but just kind of going into your two main places where you played in your hockey career, St. Louis and Boston. Kind of curious as to where you lived when you were in Boston and which food was better between St. Louis and Boston, and if you ever had a North Shore roast beef.
North Shore what? Sorry, you broke up there.
Roast beef sandwich.
Like our roast beef, because we have like the thin slice roast beef. I think that's what we have, right, guys? Like, our roast beef is like different.
North Shore delicacy.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, roast beef. My dad told me when I was younger that somebody he knew worked at Arby's, and that their roast beef comes in and it's a liquid in a bag.
Oh,
that's Arby's.
Hopefully, we don't have that.
That's a roast beef on the So St. Louis has great Italian heritage. So does Boston. At St. Louis, Midwest town, and I was a carnivore when I was in St. Louis. And then when I got to Boston, I had the intestinal issues my second year, and I became pescatarian. And no better place to be a pescatarian than in Boston. So I would give the seafood in Boston 4 thumbs up, if that's possible. The lobster roll at row 34 is life-changing. And
that's what I was going to ask you. Like, so it's the lobster roll, right? That did it.
The warm butter lobster roll, I don't do any of the mayo creamy stuff. I want the warm butter. But St. Louis, as far as just smaller town, and I played there forever, so I got the gold glove for the white glove treatment when I was there, and some cheeky good spots. And when you're in, and you can always have a table. That was nice treatment there too.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, both have great.
Never had a sandwich in in Boston. So I apologize.
Where were you staying when you were here?
We lived in Newton, right by Newton Wells.
Okay, so yeah, that's just outside of the
Yeah.
North Shore, so it doesn't really make its
Yeah.
way down there. But if you ever get the chance to come back up to Boston, go to the North Shore and try to find a little corner roast beef shop or sub shop that has
Mhm.
you get call it a roast beef three-way. It's one of
What's
the
the
best.
chain? Roast beef. What is the chain up there? Or
It's
maybe not
Kelly's.
chain, there's a couple.
Kelly's, right?
Kelly's
Yeah, I
is
think
the
it's
big
Kelly's.
chain,
Yeah,
There's a lot of like little mom and pop kind of shops that are a lot,
those are the better
lot
ones. Yeah.
better. Really,
Yeah.
really
I've
good.
never had either. So I want to make sure I get the right one if I ever get there and indulge. So.
Yeah, there's man, I mean, probably every sub shop or pizza place definitely has one. The best ones I think have like the hole in the walls. I mean, like I don't know.
Yeah, you don't even want to see
Fine,
signage in front of you. You just
My
wanna go
girlfriend
and-
says I have an issue with eating roast beef. She goes, every time we go out somewhere, she goes, you always get the roast beef. I'm like, hey, listen, you always get a salad, so I don't know why you're yelling at me. No, I'm just kidding. She doesn't. Her and I eat the same amount of things. She just doesn't understand the appeal to the roast beef. But
Next time you're in Boston, you gotta get it.
yeah, definitely. So if
Fair
you
enough.
ever find your way out here,
I appreciate you, man.
Yeah. No, David, again, we can't thank you enough. And, just a note to our listeners and followers, David and his family, they have a charity called Athletes for Animals. Please, if you guys are out there, I have a dog myself. I am a huge animal lover, so I definitely resonate with David a ton. For a special thank you. Sorry, I don't know why my mouth got dry real quick. As a special thank you, David, we're going to make a donation to your organization for you giving us your time today and chatting with us. It's been, you're making our dream. We're not making it to the NHL, but we're living vicariously through you. Yeah, my letter got lost in the mail like 12 years ago. So for those of you who listen, please consider making a donation to athletesforanimals.org. It's a great charity, especially if you're an animal lover. But David, it's been an absolute pleasure, man, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you so much, David.
Thanks so much, David. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Thanks, David. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. How about that? David Backus with his insights into the NHL and telling us all about his journey. Next week, we're probably going to dissect the Bruins start of free agency and go into their NHL draft and how they did while we gather our thoughts and kind of decompress everything from there. I wanted to thank Matt for joining us. Whitey had to leave abruptly, but he'll be back next week. So, Matt, thank you for coming from Habnormals. And until next,
this was an absolute pleasure, man. I can't thank you enough
awesome.
for letting me take part in this, and again, I can't thank David enough for giving us his time. I mean, it was just a phenomenal, very very friendly, very lovely person to meet and just speak with there. It's gonna be awesome, I think, and I think our listeners are gonna have a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again so much, David. We can't thank you enough. Again, guys, please consider making a donation to Athletes for Animals. You can get it on athletesforanimals.org. Again, amazing donation, amazing cause. But until next time, guys, go Bruins.
Go Habs, go.
Fuck off.